What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Freelance Fridays. And this is the show where we answer your questions about freelancing. And today we are going to be talking about what? We're going to be talking about how to land your first gig. I am Matthew Encina. I am your host. The first 7 years of my career, I was a freelancer, and the last 8 I spent hiring other freelancers. So know a little thing or two. If you're not connected with me, you can find me online at Matthew Encina. Of course, I am not alone. I am joined by my two lovely ladies. I am joined by Aaron and Ricky.
What's going on, guys?
Yeah.
Hello everyone. Filling in for Erica because her eye was malfunctioning, but she's totally fine.
Yeah, we're just gonna do some me and Aaron here. Yeah, so don't
me and
worry
Ricky.
about it.
Me and
This will
Ricky.
be
Yeah.
So
airtight show.
Airtight.
Yeah, we'll see about that. All right, so let's get into this. Let's jump to my deck. I want to clarify one thing today, and I want to clarify how we're using the term freelancer, because I think that some people are using it in different terms, and I just want to clarify how we're using it here on the show. So a freelancer in my eyes is this. There is you who gets hired by a studio or company as work for hire. You are an extension of their team, like you're another designer of their internal team, and you are helping to do work for their clients. That is how I see freelancers. That's how we're using that definition in the episode today, and pretty much in all the episodes from here to come. If, for whatever reason, you are getting your own clients and you are not working through a studio or company, you should be looking at yourself a little differently. You should be looking at yourself as a small business. And why is that? Because you are no longer somebody who's working through a company, and you have the ability to speak directly to decision makers. You can affect the budget, the process, and even try value-based pricing. So again, freelancer is the term we are using, and in this sense, you are working for a studio or a company for their clients. Is that clear to you guys? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
I
so.
mean, yeah.
I'm half here because I'm pretty
Yeah,
nervous.
man.
So
We're trying to
here.
do a million things at once, but yeah, you're always clear to me,
Yeah.
Matthew.
All right, cool. So now that we got that term out of the way, now we all know what a freelancer is. The question is, how do I get my first freelance job? And whenever you want, Aaron, feel free to cut to my beautiful face, because, you know, we don't always want to just look at slides.
There you go.
There we go. I know you got to get in that cadence.
Yeah.
It's all right. It's all good. We're trying. It shows how much we need Erica,
Yeah,
right?
there you go.
Hope you're feeling better, Erica. So how do I get my first freelance jobs? Well, there's a couple things you want to consider. Number one, where do you want to work? I mean, it sounds kind of silly, a little obvious, but this is really important to identify where you want to work. And I'm going to break each of these down for you guys. Second, we're going to look at your portfolio. How does it stack up, and what's important to put in there? And then lastly, how do you reach out? How do you reach out so that you can connect with somebody and that you can talk to the right people so that you can get in working at one of these places that you want to work at? So let's start with number one. Where do you want to work? Why is this so important? Well, wherever you want to work, you need to study and reverse engineer that information. And I'm going to give you guys an example here. Well, actually, let's focus on this first. So if we jump back to my slides, where are you going to look for these companies? You might be looking online through Behance or Instagram or some curated blogs where you see some work, maybe some design work, some packaging work, identity work, and you say, wow, that looks really awesome. Chances are there is a studio and group of people behind it. So you need to go and chase down that rabbit hole. Really where you want to end up is on their website. And the website, if they're doing a good job, they should have all the information you need in there to figure out how to connect and contact with those people. Once you get to their website, there is a couple things that you need to study. You need to look at, one, their portfolio. You need to see, are they doing a ton of other really cool work that you want to be doing? Number two, where are they located at? Is this a studio that you could show up and work at every day? Can you show up to their location? 3, company culture. What is it like to work there? Does this look like a serious place, a fun place? Like, what does it look like to work there, and do you feel like you fit in? 3, who works there, the people. This is really important because there are ways outside of emailing that you're going to be able to contact these people. I'm going to break that down later. And lastly, opportunities. Some of these websites, if they keep this stuff updated, they will post any opportunities for jobs. So I know this is super straightforward. It seems very obvious, but for some reason, people don't bother to look on company websites. Okay. So actually, I was going to pause here for any questions, but I don't know if it seems pretty early to ask questions.
We're getting a bunch of questions. People are really engaging today, so it's good. I just want to say really quickly that people have been asking about working remotely, and Matthew told me before that we're going to address that at a separate live stream.
Yes.
So just table that question and just make sure you keep coming back to the futures content so we can address that for you. But one of the questions I saw was working for free because you have little experience or you're young.
Right.
So what do you say to a company that says, oh, you're young, you're in college, you should just work for free?
I would say no. But I think it's really important to figure out ways where you can build up some experience, just because in most instances, in a lot of cases, a lot of companies will require you to have some experience, right? This is kind of this weird, silly catch-22 thing. In order for you to get experience, you need experience, right? Like it's a kind of a weird thing that they ask for. So there are ways to do that, and I think the best way is internships. And I'm actually going to get into that at the very tail end of this segment. So I will get deep into that, but I feel like there are opportunities where you can jump in, where there's a nice safety net for you to experiment and try and get into the company culture. And for me, that's through internships. And I will share my experience interning and maybe pick these guys' brains a little bit about their internships.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. So let's keep moving forward, because I feel like the nature of these questions, we might start covering it already. And then I don't want to go ahead. So now that we know where we want to work, let's focus on you. Let's look at your portfolio. And what do we want to study here? Well, Chris says this all the time. You need to look at your portfolio, you need to look at their portfolio, and you need to close the gap. Your work needs to look like theirs. And that's the easiest way that you can find your way working in one organization. If your work is very graphic, has a lot of type, and you see on the other side the studio that you want to work for does amazing typography, layouts, then you know you're going to be a good fit. If you do a lot of illustration and the company does a lot of type, how would you fit in there? How would they use you? How could they utilize you in their system? So you got to be thinking about that. Look at your portfolio, look at theirs, and then you close the gap. Okay, so now let's talk about the specifics of your portfolio. What are the must-haves? What are things that you need to put in there? When I refer to portfolio, I'm talking about your website, right? Wherever you're hosting your work, wherever you're sending people to, this is what it must have. Number one, you have to be very clear about what you do. If you are a designer, if you're an animator, are you an editor? Do you lay out magazine copy? What do you design? Are you a developer? Are you a front-end developer, back-end developer, visual designer? There's all kinds of titles, but it has to be very clear what you do. And you have to have at least one core T skill, right? So I have that on my list here. Chris talks about this all the time. And what is a deep T skill? It means you have one skill that you're really, really good at. This is your calling card. And then you have a bunch of secondary and tertiary skills around that. But it has to be clear that you do one thing, at least one thing, very, very well. Next, in terms of how many pieces, because I get asked this a lot, how many pieces should I put in my portfolio? And, we look for consistency, so maybe 3 to 5. But honestly, if I just saw 2 amazing pieces, that might be enough. All I care about is seeing your best work, because it shows me that you have a sense of taste and you understand that you can edit things out. I think there's a lot of creatives out there that just don't know how to edit themselves because they're so attached emotionally to their own work and they can't be objective about what is good and what isn't. So I've seen a lot of people who they'll toss all of their client work up there just for the name, just to say that they've worked with clients. But the thing is, all the work doesn't look good. Then they put all of their portfolio pieces up from high school, from junior high, elementary school. It's like, I don't care to see that. I just want to see the very best. So curate and boil it down so I know that you could edit yourself and you can remain very objective. Lastly, must have, you must be easy to contact. Surprisingly enough, I've gone to some freelancers' websites where they don't have their contact information on there. How the heck am I going to contact you? I don't get it. They don't put their email, they don't put their phone number. There's just no way to contact this person, and it is ridiculous. So that is a must-have. I know it sounds obvious, but it is a must-have. Okay, so next, what is nice to have? These are secondary things that it's just nice to have in there. It's not fully expected, but these are things that I like seeing. I like seeing secondary skills. So if it's clear when I land on your site and I land on your portfolio that all of the projects that you have listed up there are your best and it focuses on your core strength. But sometimes I see this where there's another tab or another link to maybe some drawings. Maybe you're also good at this artistic side that you express, and maybe that's just a separate link somewhere else hidden on your site. So I like seeing your secondary skills because it makes me also realize that, wow, this person is really good at one thing, but they're also good at these other things, and I might be able to use them in multiple areas on my job.
I have a question there. So
Yes.
you should make it pretty clear that there's your main skill and the main thing you're looking for, and then secondary skills is separate. It's not just like further down the examples of the projects are secondary
That's
skills.
correct. So if I was looking at you, Aaron, and I was building a website for you, I would say that I'm Aaron and I'm a videographer. I edit and I shoot films. Secondary skills might be, I also like to storyboard, and you might have a separate thing where it's all these storyboard sketches, right? Maybe that's represented in a case study, a project that you're doing. Or maybe a secondary thing is you are a colorist on the side. Maybe you're not claiming that as your core skill, but on the side you have other projects where you've done the color, right? So those are secondary skills.
Okay.
Other things are hobbies. Sometimes it's very cool to figure out what your hobbies are because it starts to show some of your personality. So again, if I'm using you as an example, Aaron, it might be cool to see photos of you skateboarding or people around you that skateboard, because it does two things. It shows, wow, he's also a good photographer. He could take photos and he's into skate culture, and I might relate to that. I could have been a former skater back in the day. I'm not, but that could be something that I relate to. And people like to work with people they can relate with. So it's okay to show some personality on your site. It's actually quite nice because I feel I get to know you. And it's kind of like this channel here, right? I just met with a Future fan earlier, Nathan. He visited the office and he's like, what? I feel like I know everybody in the office, but I forget that we've actually never met. But because you guys have such a good online presence, you guys have so much personality out there, I feel like I know all of the individuals that work here at the Future. So that's really nice. Put that out there. Don't be afraid to show your personality, because that's how you connect with people.
That's interesting, because I feel like a lot of times you would think that the personality can only kind of hurt you, that you're looking for like a hired gun, a tool. And if the tool has too much personality, it might hurt you. But you're saying that it could even help you. So that's interesting.
Right. Well, like if I were making a film about skateboarding, or I had a show about skateboarding, and I'm looking for videographers or editors, somebody to help me create the content for it. And then I'm vetting between you and Ricky. And Ricky has nothing on his site about skateboarding, and you have all this personal stuff about skateboarding. Do you know who I'm going to choose?
Probably
Ricky.
Yeah.
Well, his skill level is... Well, let's not get there. Let's not go there.
Let's leave my skateboarding skills on it.
No, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
No,
if you guys were if you guys had equal skills,
Yep.
and then I saw that Aaron was passionate about skateboarding, I'm going to connect with him, and I'm going to hire him because he knows his way around these four wheels, this deck, and he could speak my language.
Yeah, it's not foreign to him.
Right. So those are nice to have. Some other nice things to have is some accolades, like if you got recognized by any third parties or awards. I know Chris said awards don't matter, but it's nice to just drop those in there. It's community recognition. Not that you need it, but it's nice to have. And then what I like seeing sometimes is a blog. I work with some freelancers who keep a blog where they show all of their daily experiments or weekly experiments where they're trying stuff. They don't put too much weight on it, but they have a blog. Either they're sharing their thoughts, they're sharing their process, things that they're experimenting with. And I love love seeing that stuff, especially if I'm already looped in. If I land on your page, you have amazing work. It's very strong. I'm going to keep digging deeper. I'm going to spend more time on your site because I want to get to know you. So I'm going to look at all these secondary things, right? Your personality, your hobbies, your blog, because then I get to know you. So even without talking to you, I know exactly who you are, more or less, if you're pretty expressive on your site. Okay?
I have a question there.
Yeah.
Is there like a preferred format? Like, do you prefer like seeing all this information on a Facebook page, or is a website the main thing, or Instagram, or does it matter?
You know, maybe I'm old school, but I prefer going to a website. I know a lot of people I connect with nowadays are just directly through Instagram. That's where most of my conversations are. But in terms of actually seeing work, when I ask somebody, can I see your portfolio and work? I like to be directed to a website. I don't want to sift through somebody's Instagram. That's just silly.
Okay.
The reason why is websites you can customize to pretty much be anything. Imagine I was meeting you for the very first time and you are very limited in how you could present yourself, right? It's the website, you can pretty much put anything on there. You can configure it. You can embed videos. You can have a nice call-out cover page. You can do all kinds of stuff, and you're controlling the story and flow in how I get introduced to you. Versus something like Instagram, yeah, you could show a nice feed in there, but I can't see much else. It's a limited platform. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking it's almost a double-edged sword because I mean now it's risky, right? If you don't like the way that I'm kind of laying out my information, my story on the website, that could almost hurt me in a way. But if it's just Instagram, they kind of have a pretty standard way of laying out the information. I don't know.
Right. So, yeah, it sounds like you were on the other side of that. For me, I prefer looking at websites because you can control the story, the narrative of how you are presented to another person.
Cool.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm with Matthew on that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Hey, Aaron.
There you go.
Anyway, so I wanted to give an example of this. So there's this young woman that I have been consulting. Her name is Michelle. And she came to me maybe a few months ago, maybe 3 months ago, and she had this challenge. She was transitioning in her career. She was going from a full-time gig, doing all kinds of miscellaneous stuff, jack of all trades, in-house somewhere, and she wanted to go freelance. After consulting her, we figured out that she wanted to work at some motion design studios, more specifically, ones that are 2D illustration, animation, motion design studios, right? Because she had a lot of passion in illustration and animation, and she's been developing her skills over the year. The problem is when we first initially looked at her website, it was kind of all over the place. I landed on her site. She had some illustration here, some drawing here, some animation here, and it was just kind of all over the place. And then as I clicked through the things, it was inconsistent. So some look really cool, and there's a lot of great exploration and details about the project. And others, I just clicked on it, and it was just the image, no context, no information. So I was very critical to Michelle, and I said, you know what? If I was coming in cold here and you sent me this site, I wouldn't know what your core skill is. And two, I don't have a good sense of who you are because you're not utilizing the site to explain stuff to me. So let's take a look at her site today. She has been updating it. So if you go to my screen, so this is Michelle's site here.
Is this before she updated
No,
it?
unfortunately, I didn't capture that. But like I was saying, when I landed on her page before, she had a bunch of thumbnails of all kinds of different stuff.
Okay.
So now when I come here, there's her demo reel right at the top. So I know right away that she is a motion designer. And just based off of the work here, she likes illustration, 2D animation, and a little bit of 3D. So we could just quickly watch her reel. We don't need to watch the whole thing. But before, she didn't even have a reel. So I didn't know this is the stuff that she wanted to do. It wasn't clear to me. But a reel, for those who are animating or editing, like it's very helpful to summarize all of your work in a very short amount of time. So 60 to 90 seconds is all I need to know if this person is the right fit for me.
So this is how you start when you're vetting a freelancer. You just go to their website and click on the reel.
I look at the top 3 things. If the first thing is not good, I'm going to click away and I'm going to close. And I can decide in 5 seconds if you're not good.
Wow.
It's all it takes, right?
So the reel is just extremely important there.
It's very important.
Okay.
Whatever's on the top left on the website is the most important thing to click on. So like I was saying, if I click through this stuff, what's cool is I click on one of these projects. She gives me a little description here on the side about the program she used. As I scroll through here, look, what else does she give me? She gives me all this cool process work. So she's showing me that she, illustrated this originally. And then she made some storyboards. And then she did these, the type in Cinema 4D and 3D. So what did I learn? I learned a couple of things here. I learned that she likes to illustrate. She can do black and white storyboards. And she actually knows 3D, which I thought this was just a 2D thing that she was animating here. So if we keep going through her site, we're going to find that she has all these robust case studies like this, where it allows me to understand how she works, what she does, some of the process that she goes through, and I could map that against my own. I could see that, look, she has amazing drawing skills, right? I can't even draw that well.
That is pretty cool.
Right? And then she built all of this in 3D, and then she edited the sound design, I think, in...
That's Audition, I think.
Audition,
Looks
there
like
you
Audition,
go.
yeah.
Right, there you go. So it's like she's pretty good now about showing me what she does. And this is a core skill. So as I click through all of these projects, I get to see that she is a very strong motion designer that loves illustration as well.
So you like that she shows you the entire process, bringing you along with the journey. That's an addition.
Yes, because now I can crawl into her head and I could understand how she works. Because that's the important thing with freelancers, especially new freelancers. You want to know how they work. Can they fit into the culture here? Can they work with me? Like, does that make sense? But by putting it as a case study on your site, it allows me to see that you have a process that's very clear, and it shows me all how you think, right? Because design is not something where you just keep throwing stuff at a wall and you keep moving pixels around until it feels right. That is not design. No. Design is a very scientific approach where you have a process where you start with a big goal and then you're refining every step of the way until you solve the problem at the end. And that's why case studies are very important in showing your process and your thinking behind it. Okay.
Very nice. That was a great explanation with a good example. Very clear.
And I just wanted to say lastly on, Ricky's laughing at me, on Michelle's site, if we cut back to it, remember how I said it's cool to show your secondary stuff? Well, look, she has a tab for illustration. So if I'm interested, if I'm one of these studios that she wants to work with, and I look, whoa, she does all this other illustration, which is cool, right? She's doing these side things here, which it doesn't fit her core skill, but it's like, it's interesting because maybe I latch onto this. This is from some anime, and it's like, oh, she's into anime. I get it. All these crazy colors. Again, more anime. So if we were working on some project for Anime Expo, I could probably hire her because I know she's into that culture.
I see. I was thinking it's not clear on this illustration, from these illustrations, if she drew these or she likes these, or like,
Yeah, these
not so much case study on these.
That's a good point. So Michelle, if you're watching, maybe you just put a little title up here at the top that just says, here are a couple of illustrations that I do on the side, or something, give some context, right? Because you did a good job on your projects, but the illustrations, I think we need a little bit more context about this.
And putting those illustrations on her website means she's trying to say that she's willing to do that as well.
That's correct.
Okay.
But because it's not the first thing, because it's not the top left thing, it's not where we immediately land, I know that it's a secondary thing. So you got to think about that user experience, that journey. So when I first land, what am I seeing? What do I know about you? And if I am curious after I click on the first 2 or 3 projects, if I want to learn more, what else am I going to find out about you on your site?
Right. You're letting Matthew know by showing it second that it might not be your first core skill, but it's something that you could do if you were asked to do it.
That's correct.
Cool.
All right, so let's just jump back into here. Let's open it up to some questions. Is there any other questions right now before I move into my next section, which is about reaching out? How do you reach out to some of these studios?
No, yeah, there's a question that I wrote down that I think is pretty interesting. How do you critique yourself? So for that example, you were working with her, but how do I just by myself look at all of my work and try to figure out which one is the best one to put on my website if I have a bunch of work that I want to show potential clients?
Right. So that goes to step number 1. Where do you want to work? Why is that important? Because now you have a goal, you have a clear metric, and you have some guidelines for where to work. So let's go back to my screen. So one place that Michelle wanted to go work at was Buck. So Buck, if you guys don't know, they do some amazing 2D animations and illustrations, and they've been around, I think, since Blind has. So they've been around probably for 20 years. So they do some really cool illustration. But can you see, just by scrolling on this front page, you see their work? And then now let's look at Michelle's.
It's a little different.
Is it?
Is it?
I don't think so. I look at these
this
things.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Look, if you look at this, like see this illustration, this flame style, and then you look at this.
Oh yeah, man, those are the same.
Yeah, that is pretty
So
similar.
Yeah.
So this is a
Even
really
the black website.
That's correct. So this is one clear example of where she closed the gap, where she looked at where she wanted to work and she closed the gap.
Nice.
So if you're having a hard time evaluating, well, should I put this on my site? Just hold it up next to where you want to work at. Look at their portfolio and say, does my portfolio look like theirs? Is it as good as theirs? Am I going to fit in? And I think that's the easiest way to evaluate. That's why you have to identify where you want to work. Because if you don't know, then now you have nothing to measure your own portfolio against. Is that a good question? Is that a good answer?
That is a great answer.
Yeah, I like that.
Great. So now let's get back into my deck here. Let's get to the juicy part. Let's talk about reaching out, because I know we're already at 4:30. We started a few minutes late, but I want to get to this part. So now that you know where you want to work, you have done a check on your portfolio, you know what needs to go in there, it's time to reach out. But let's do some real talk real quick. Do you really think that they're looking for you? I feel like a lot of the nature of the questions that I got this past week, it's like, I put my website up, but no one's hitting me up. Let me ask you, why would I, somebody who's trying to hire somebody, go out and find you? How can I even find you to begin with?
Well, if I'm super great, like, people will just find me, right? Because I'm just great.
Really?
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 Really? I mean, that's just real talk. I think, honestly, if your inbound marketing game is really strong, where you're creating tons and tons of content, or you're rising up to the top of search, like you are on the top 10 in search, then people will find you. But if you're not, if you search your name, let's say if I am looking for a motion designer and I type in motion designer on Google, who's going to be the top 10? Maybe I'll find them. I bet I won't even find my own name in there. And that's the whole point. It doesn't really matter. People are not going out to find you. You have to go to them. And that's really important. So there are a couple ways that you can reach out to these studios, and let's go through them pretty quickly. So let's jump back to my screen. So the first one, the most obvious one, is just email the dang studio. Usually they have it listed. It says jobs@thatcompanieswebsite.com. This is the most common way. The only challenge here is if they're not looking, you're just going to get added to a pile. You're going to get added to the queue of the many, many people that are applying for jobs. So I know Pixar, I think they get at least 1,000 portfolios a day.
Jesus.
Who do you think is going to sift through that? Probably nobody, right? Or it's backlogged. They probably have 10,000 that they have to go through, right? So that's the most obvious way, but you might not get a whole lot of luck if they're not looking. Second one, look for job listings, and they do this all the time on LinkedIn or job boards. There's a lot of job boards out there if you are looking specifically for, designers, or if you have a niche. For instance, like Working Not Working is a great place where you could find and connect with studios or companies. If you're in the motion design industry, there's motionographer.com, and they have job boards. And if wherever you go, I think AIGA has some job postings on there, but this is a second tier up. So if people are actively looking, this is a good place to contact, because that means if you send something to the contact there, they're going to be looking, and you're going to be evaluated soon. So what's important is as soon as these posts go up, you have to respond quickly. You want to be one of the first, because you know what's going to happen. Some job listings, they stay up for weeks, and sometimes they only stay up for a few days. And the reason being is as soon as they find the right candidate, they're going to stop looking. They're not going to look at candidate number 100 if number 3 was perfect for them. So it's really important to get at the top of that pile and respond quickly when you see these job postings. And then lastly, make sure you thoroughly read the descriptions. Some people, they just spam. And if you spam, I am not going to review you. So let me give you an example. Our old executive producer, or our old head of production, Amy, whenever she put a job posting out, she put a list of, requirements, what we're looking for. And at the very, very bottom in small text, she put, looking for a detail-oriented person. So if you're interested in applying, tell us in your email what your favorite core value of Blind is. So it was like a little Easter egg that was hidden there. And this was for a producer position, somebody that had to be organized. So probably 90% of the people were just spamming and sending resumes. She dumped all of those. And then the last 10% who actually followed the rules, the instructions, those are the people that made it through. So it's very important to read details. If you're just spamming, don't even try. You're wasting people's time. You might even upset people, because if you waste my time and I remember your name, I'm going to blacklist you for the rest of my life.
Ooh, yikes.
I'm just telling you, don't waste my time. Don't waste people's time, because wasting somebody's time is probably the most painful thing to go through. It's the most irritating thing to go through.
That's interesting, because I feel like most of the time you don't think about the guy hiring you, what he's going through, what he's thinking about. I'm just like, let me just try to get as many as I can out there, as many hooks in the water.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
Yeah.
That's right. All right. So next, this is a next higher level. If you go back to my slides, another way to reach out is just be social on social media. I made a whole video about this on how to reach out. I'll drop that in the description below and add it as a card. But remember earlier I was saying that you have to study the website because you want to find out who works there? Well, you get to do a little cyber stalking here, and not in the creepy way. I mean, find out who works there, see if they have handles online, and start conversations with them. Everybody's just a real human being. You'll be surprised that if you DM somebody online, they're very likely to DM you back because they're just a regular person. But here's how you don't do it. Don't DM somebody and say, can you review my portfolio? Because you know what? You're wasting my time. You're making an ask of me and you haven't even done anything. It's kind of like going on a first date. And the first thing you do before you even say, hi, my name is, you're already leaning in for a kiss.
Not a good move.
Ricky,
Not
you've been
not
there,
a good
buddy.
move.
No,
Not
doesn't
pro.
work, doesn't work.
Not pro.
Not gonna work. So
Nope.
so everybody likes to be romanced a little bit. Like, make me feel good about myself. Let's be friends first, you know? So when you're reaching out online, just be social. Like their posts, comment on their posts, and then just be very genuine and curious.
That's funny because I've DM'd Matthew before, and the one thing I did with Matthew is I know he likes rock climbing, so I would periodically send him videos of people rock climbing, and we would engage in that. So
Right.
there you go.
So he was smart. He followed my rules. And did I respond, Ricky?
Yeah, we used to talk about rock climbing and how cool this like girl was at scaling this whole rock wall. And
That's right.
now I have a job here.
Just there we go.
Yeah,
See?
look at that.
So be social on social media, man. It's important. And then here's another way. I don't really, I have mixed feelings about this, but, you could also get a rep. So this is my last slide here. You can go through talent agencies where I've gotten reached out to these people before. And the cool thing about this is they will find work for you. So there's a rep. They look at your portfolio. They ask you questions about your skills, and then they go out there and sell you. So if they're selling me, they're saying like, oh, hey, Matthew's this great designer, animator. He's been working for more than 10 years. And do you want to connect with him? So they're knocking on doors for you. And the way this works is they add a percentage on top of either your rate or your salary if you end up staffing. So if my rate is $600, they're going to add a 10% fee on top of that. So they get commissions off of those things, right? The only issue why I don't like talent agencies is because they're a buffer between you and your potential studios that you could work with. You're disconnected from the contacts. You don't own any of those contacts, right? They're acting as a buffer, negotiating on your behalf. So that's the only thing I don't like about that. And but yeah, I mean, if you find a good agency, some people who's going to work really hard for you, then maybe this works, and maybe people can share their own experiences with that.
What do those talent agencies do that I can't do myself?
That's a great question. Well, they have email lists. That's pretty much it. They're just going to be relentless on knocking on doors for you. They're working on behalf of the companies that are trying to hire, and they're trying to connect them with talent. So they're just like trying to make mutual connections. So they're just accelerating that process for you. But if you're really good, if you're really smart, you're doing that yourself. Right? If you are relentless, if you're hustling and you just want to connect with people, you could be emailing all day. I know some people who it's like, okay, I'm going to spend weeks and weeks preparing my portfolio in Reel, and then I'm going to just spam it and send it out and just cross my arms and wait for people to hire me. And then that's it. Oh, nobody's hiring me. Oh, I guess I suck. It's like, no, you haven't even tried. You tried to send out a bunch of stuff to jobs@studio.com, and you're just part of the hundreds that have already applied before you. So you're just in the queue. So you just got to be really smart. If you're not willing to do the work yourself, then you can go hire a rep or connect with one of these talent agencies. Okay. And then I think that's my last bit there. I have one little thing that I wanted to share because this question came up. It's like, how do you, when you're first getting your work, do you want to do work for free? And I'll admit, I think back in the day, maybe 15 years ago, I might have done a little bit of free work for friends or family just to say that I could. But I think the best way to get into a place is to intern first. And why is that important? Let's jump to my slides. So let's talk about my journey. At first I was a student of Chris's. I was a student in his class back in 2006 at Art Center. And then I asked him right after I took his class, I was like, Chris, can I intern for you? I had so much fun in your class. I feel like I could learn from you and I can contribute to you. So he took me on as an intern. As soon as I had that internship on my belt, it was a little selfish on my part, because the reason why I wanted to intern is, to learn from Chris, but I also wanted to say that I had experience so I could go to another studio and say, I interned over at Blind, so I have that experience checkbox clicked off. And then for many years, like I said earlier, for 7 years, I was freelancing, and then eventually I became staff here at Blind. And what's the good thing about interning is you'll finally get to learn how a studio operates, because what they teach you in school or what you're learning on your own, you have no insight onto how it really works inside a studio. So it's really good to see behind the curtain and figure out how things actually work, because it's very different than what you're imagining.
Yeah, that company culture.
Yep.
That was something that was new to me. So
yeah. That's it's huge. Different, right? Different than what your expectation was.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it was just like, can you do that grind of those many days in a row where you're kind of putting in that much work? Because that's probably more work than you'll be doing when you were in school, because you had other obligations.
That's right. Because in school, you have some kind of crazy schedule where you're like, okay, I got homework for this week and I don't have to turn it in until next week. Where if you're working in the studio, I could come up to you and say like, oh, hey, I need you to design this asset. Can it be done by 5 p.m.? And it's like such a different working mentality. And you can't take the work home either. Once our office is closed, we're done, and we come back the next day. So it's very different. Very, very different. Mm-hmm. The good thing about interning, too, is you get to learn on the job. There's a big, big safety net. The cool thing about being an intern, if you screw up, it's not that big of a deal. It's okay. There's a lot of forgiveness there. But if you're a highly paid freelancer, if you come in, you have this great portfolio, and I'm paying you tons and tons of money, and then you screw up, I'm going to be furious at you. Versus an intern, if they just screw up, well, it's like they're just an intern. It's okay. They're still learning about this stuff, right? So there's a great safety net. So if you can find some opportunities to intern at a place that you really feel like you can grow and learn from the people there, because you found out a place where you want to work, then I would definitely take that as an early opportunity before you start freelancing. All right. Whew. Rounding this off, I know we are over time here. Hopefully people aren't minding it too much, and hopefully this information is good. But I wanted to give a couple of pro tips. If you guys are approaching people, if you're doing emails, if you're reaching out, you have to do something memorable. And there's just a couple of examples here of how people have made things memorable. So Caleb, who was our intern earlier this year, what he did is he made a custom video and he tweeted it at me, Ben, and Chris. And it was a cool introduction video. It was showing his animation skills, but it was telling his story. And it said something along like this, like, hey, my name is Caleb, and in high school I always liked art and design. And eventually I got into animation, where I found my passion. And I follow you guys online, and I've always wanted to work at Blind and the Future. So he made this custom video that was all animated just for us. And guess what? We all remembered him, even though he probably wasn't of the people we were reviewing, he even wasn't the most highly skilled person. But because it was so personal, we hired him.
So that personality comes in.
Personality kind of trumped skill level in Caleb's
That's right.
story.
Personality, passion. It's like, wow, he really wanted to be here, because I know that if he's here, he's going to be very passionate about the work. Right?
Gotcha.
So that was Caleb. Then there's Julia, who's
I love this story.
Yeah, Julia is currently interning right now. I think she might have sent off a digital email to us at jobs@blind.com or something for our internship in the fall. I don't know if she got a response. Maybe she didn't. But what she ended up doing is she drove to the studio. She dropped off a handmade cover letter and her resume, and just said, like, I just wanted to drop this off in person. I just wanted to make sure you guys saw this. And I hope you have a good day. And then she just left, and we're like, what?
That was so cool, because
I remember that. It was weird.
We actually got footage of it, so we should show the fans that. But it was the coolest thing because Greg got it and then handed it to Ben, who was like reviewing the resume, and Ben spent more time on that email or on that resume because he was physically handed to it and blown away about her initiative than he did at any other resume he was handed for the last 6 months. Like he spent so much time on that.
That's right.
I got to say, it was awkward for her. I could tell it took a lot of courage to go
so
do that
awesome.
because it was
It's so
unexpected for Greg and Ben.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. And then Ben immediately called her. I think it was 30 minutes later. He picked up the phone and just called her. It's like, hey, Julia, I just wanted to catch you on your way home. And then he gave her the internship then and there.
That's so cool.
Amazing.
Great
And then
story.
the last interesting story, I forget the guy's name. His name might have been Matthew also. He just came by the studio and he made this custom gift set for Chris. And he made this custom cologne.
Like a scent, like a Hugo Boss like spray.
It was something. Well, he just designed it. Like he designed this very neat package. He's like, "Oh, Chris, I just wanted to drop this off because I wanted to thank you for the time you gave me weeks or months before. But I just wanted you to have this." And Chris spent like half an hour just sitting down and chatting with this guy because it was such a memorable experience. So that's that. Do something that's memorable. Do something that's unorthodox because we live in a very digital world. Make sure you are very personable when you're reaching out and just connect with people. Be a good human being. Don't go in for the ask, right? If you email me or message me right after this and say, hey, Matthew, I saw your stream. Can you review my portfolio? I'm probably going to have to ignore you because that's really annoying. But if you start to socialize with me and connect with me and we connect on a human level, then it's very, very likely that I'm going to connect and reciprocate and favor you in case there's a good connection for us. So I know we're at 40 minutes. Is there any good questions that you guys want to address?
Well, besides not emailing, when you are emailing, how do you approach a subject line, and then what are you saying in the body of that email? Because a lot of people, they can't physically drive here,
right?
Or whatever the case may be. If they want to apply to a big company, they can't. People can't go in there,
right?
What do you say in the subject line, and what do you say in the body to kind of separate yourself and show that you're passionate about the company, you want to do good work for them?
Right. There's no template for this.
Right.
There is absolutely no template for this. You just have to find and connect with that person, what they're interested in, and then personalize that message, that email specifically for them. I won't go into detail because I already made a whole video about this, and I'll put it in the description below, and I'm going to add it as a card up here. So you guys are going to see that right after. But there's a whole video about how I craft DMs, emails, and how I reached out to people to connect with people. But just make it highly personal, just like Ricky did for me, where he was sending me all kinds of videos and images of rock climbing, and we were just chatting. Like, he didn't even ask for work.
Nope.
Not once did he ask about interning or working at Blind or the Future. We were just having a conversation.
Yep.
And after maybe like 3 months, he's like, "Oh, I saw you have an internship. I'm applying. Just want to make sure you got it." And then now he's here.
And now I'm here.
So you got to play the long game, huh?
Long game.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
See, I'm sure he's smooth with the ladies too. I'm sure that's his
the long
game.
game.
The long game. All right, it's Friday. It's Friday.
I feel like that's interesting because I've heard Chris say like even in the streams, he's like, get to the question. Like, what is it that you want? Like, I'm busy, so let's get to it right now.
Yeah.
But it seems like in this sense, it's the opposite. You want to play the long game and just kind of get to know somebody first.
You want to seem genuine. You don't just want to.
You want to seem genuine. You don't
you want to be genuine. You want to be genuine.
Even if you do want the job, because I think at that time I was still in school, so even if you had offered me the job, I wouldn't have been able to take it. So I was just a fan of the channel and a fan of Matthew, and I was just trying to create a relationship. If you are just genuine and just like, hey, what's going on, and you're not going in for the ask right away, then it's like, okay, I don't have to give him something because he's not trying to ask me for something. That's
a good insight. Just your goal is to create a relationship.
Yeah, just
that's
absolutely 100%.
So when he sees an email from me now addressing an internship, he goes, "Oh, I remember this kid from Instagram."
That's right.
I feel like that takes the pressure off too. Like, I don't need anything from you.
And you attach a face to it, so it's not just like emailing.
That's right.
Cool.
Is there any other questions?
No, that's all I got.
All right. Well, cool. Well, I think that's pretty much the end of the show. I know we're a little bit over. Just as a reminder, if you like this stuff, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. It really helps us out. And, I'm just here to answer your guys' question about freelancing. So if you guys have any other questions, drop it in the comments below so I know what I should answer next. So thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Freelance Fridays. We'll be back probably next week, assuming you guys ask me some really stellar questions down below. So thank you for joining us. And then I will play the outro here if you can, Mr. Aaron.